Hello and welcome back to some more Allies previews. This is day 2 of 5 of the previews week, and we've got more new Allies cards to talk about. Before I get into the specific cards, for today, I did want to make one clarification from yesterday. I sort of glossed over the fact that you get a favor when you start out in any game with a liaison and with an ally. So what I mean is it's like the Baker coin token where you get a resource to start the game. I don't remember whether that's something that was mentioned in the text that Donald X posted. It probably was, and I probably just glossed over it. But anyway, pretty relevant for evaluating some of the ally cards, like Cave Dwellers, for example, is a big one that people were talking about, where you could, trigger a shuffle on turn 1 or turn 2, like during the turn rather than after the end of turn 2, by using the starting favor. So there's potentially a lot of impact from that. But in any case, I just wanted to mention that because I think I didn't account for it. Anyway, so on to today's previews. Split piles are what we're focused on today. Split piles are back, says Donald X, only this time they rotate. Also, they have 4 different cards in them. Let's see one of the better ones to talk about this. It's Augers. So here are the Augers. So this pile starts with 4 copies of Herb Gatherer, 4 copies of Acolyte, 4 copies of Sorceress, and 4 copies of Sibyl. So that right off, that feels to me like kind of like a hybrid between like the classic split pile and a Traveler, just because of the number of different stages and the fact that there's a sort of progression, like Patrician Emporium, for example, right? That doesn't feel like a progression of steps. It's just like, here are 2 cards that have some like relationship between each other, or Catapult and Rocks. Here's 2 cards that have some relationship. Whereas the Travelers, it's like you have, they start out, as a page, and then they go through all these journeys, and eventually they become a champion, or the peasant, into the teacher. This feels more like that, at least thematically, if nothing else. Anyway, so you can only buy or gain the top card, but the first card lets you rotate the pile. This puts all copies of whatever's on top onto the bottom. If the top has 3 Herb Gatherers and then Acolytes, etc., rotating it puts all 3 Herb Gatherers on the bottom. If it was just 1 Herb Gatherer and then Acolytes, that 1 Herb Gatherer goes on the bottom. If the pile has different cards left in it, then rotating it will uncover a different one. It gets you through the pile. Yeah, so one of the things I was wondering about this concept of rotating split piles was whether it was meant to address the problem that, for example, with Catapult and Rocks, you never, not literally never, but you almost never see Rocks, because nobody wants 3 Catapults or 4 Catapults usually. And so Rocks is a card that just doesn't see much play because nobody ever uncovers it. That isn't a huge problem with most of the other split piles. It can be, and obviously, it's still less likely that you see the bottom 5 cards than the top 5 cards, relative to pretty much any other pile that you might get. So people do normally end up getting the patricians or the settlers or the encampments, but you're still less likely in any given game to have the opportunity to pick up a bustling village or an emporium than you would be a card that started on the top, obviously. And the other thing about it is that it seems like a constrained design space where you need to put these cheap spammable cards on top just so that the bottom pile is reasonably easy to access. So maybe with this approach, that opens up that design space, and now you don't need a card that you want a bunch of. You can just let it rotate out. So that's cool. So I guess we should actually look at the specific cards in this split pile. So we've got Herb Gatherer, +1 buy, put your deck into your discard pile. Look through it, and you may play a treasure from it. You may rotate the Augers. Okay, so it is on play that you can rotate them. Which is, I think, good. One of the things I was concerned about was, what if like this is like an on gain effect, and then you had like the Dame Josephine problem where you get like the good card is the top one, and then you get that, and then the pile rotates, and now your opponent doesn't have access to the good thing that you've like rotated out, and now they have to get like the bad card in order to like keep the thing going, and they don't want to do that, so now it's just like a big first mover advantage, and it seems like that is not going to be as likely to be a problem. I mean, it still could come up if you can gain and play the card before your opponent has access to it, but the fact that the other cards like you're the fact that there's more of them, the fact that like the next time you play your Gather, you might want to keep rotating the pile yourself because you want access to something. Like, in the scenario I was describing, like, right, you'd have to gain the bad card in order to like get back to the good card. But in this case, you just have to play the good card to get back to the good card. So that doesn't seem like it's going to be as big of a problem. Anyway, but yeah, so the actual effective Herb Gatherer, put your deck into your discard pile. So, Messenger, Chancellor sort of thing. Look through it, and you may play a treasure from it. So this is going to be a pretty bad card if you draw your deck. I mean, if you draw your deck, like, have drawn your deck at the point at which you play it. That seems like a significant downside. On the other hand, like compared to Messenger, which seems like the most immediate comparison. I mean, there is Chancellor, but it's a cut card. It also has the plus buy. And Chancellor doesn't. And instead of just giving you straight up 2 coins, you get to play like any treasure. So like in the case that you have a draw pile or a discard pile to play from, then you can play, like a counterfeit or a platinum or, some other more exciting treasure than just like giving you plus 2 coins. So there is more upside for sure with this card than there is with Messenger, at least on play. I mean, on buy, Messenger obviously has this other effect, but on play, this can do some exciting stuff if you've got, if you're playing a deck that's thick, and you're not gonna be expecting to draw it anyway, or mid-turn playing a treasure could be interesting as well, because you do get to effectively play the treasure mid-turn. So for example, if you gain like a Horn of Plenty, you can then play your Herb Gatherer and then play the Horn of Plenty in the middle of your turn, and then keep going to like do gain and play with your Horn of Plenty, which would be pretty cool. You could also use it to power up a Storyteller potentially. If you don't have like much treasure in hand, you could play this and then play a gold from your discard pile and then play your Storyteller, and now you can draw more cards. So there's some, or play it before like a black market. There's some stuff you could do with that. I don't know how relevant that's going to be, but it's at least pretty interesting. Moving on to Acolyte, you may trash an action or victory card from your hand to gain a gold. Oh, very transmute. You may trash this to gain an Auger. Oh, interesting. So that actually doesn't let you rotate the pile. Only the Herb Gatherer lets you rotate it. Oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting. So there's 4 Acolytes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how often this is going to be good. So like compared to Transmute, right? Transmute's kind of like a meme card for how how bad it is. I mean, very occasionally it can be useful, but I mean, you don't need to get a potion to get this card. So obviously that makes a big difference. The victory card, I want to say, so I always get confused about what the specific effect of transmute is, like which card gets turned into which. But I want to say that the victory card is the one that gets turned into another transmute, which is important because like going victory to gold means you can use this to trash estates into gold, which is, I mean, that's pretty good. Trying to check on that right now. No, I'm wrong. You can use transmute to turn estates into gold. Okay. But yeah, it's mostly the potion is like, it's a pretty slow way to trash estates. I mean, this is terminal, so like in that sense, it's not going to be like, you know, so much better than transmute on play. But the fact that it doesn't cost a potion, turning actions into gold, you're gonna do that sometimes. Like if you open with a trasher, like a chapel or something, and you get thin, and then you're just like, I don't need this anymore. You know, or you have some sort of empty cantrip, like Pearl Diver, which will no longer exist probably. But you know, if you have a card like that, and you just want to add some payload, although you would have had to gain an Acolyte in anticipation of this, which seems kind of awkward. Yeah, this card does not look powerful to me by any means, but I can see it being relevant, like as either like a sort of estate trasher of desperation, a way to, you know, like clean up sort of after a primary trasher. You trash the trasher into gold, and then you trash this to gain a different auger, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's it does not look strong to me. I mean, Herb Gatherer doesn't really either, but this one in particular does not look strong to me. Okay, next we have Sorceress. So, +1 action, name a card, reveal the top card of your deck, and put it into your hand. If it's the named card, each other player gains a curse. Oh. Huh. Now that's interesting. So, obviously, you know, it's a cantrip cursor. That's pretty strong. You know, this is like familiar that doesn't cost a potion, except it's conditional. So that, and you can't like open with it or anything. So that's, you know, it's not going to be as fast as some cursors. Even though you don't need the potion, you do need to get like access to it. But I imagine this is still going to be like fairly strong, just because like cantrip cursing is a pretty strong effect. But yeah, you have like a, you know, a sort of Wishing Well or Mystic style thing, except that it's not the draw that's conditional on it, it's the cursing. The nice thing about this is that, like Mystic, it inspects the top card rather than drawing a card and then inspecting a card, which makes it relatively easier to set up. There are more effects that affect the top card of your deck than that affect the top 2 cards of your deck, where you would know what that card was. But unlike Mystic, your draw isn't actually conditional on that, like getting on you actually getting it right. So, you know, it's not ever going to be a stop card, even if you don't manage to curse with it. It's definitely going to encourage you to play with a more homogeneous deck if you are investing in this. You know, I mean, in the same way that, you know, cards like Wishing Well or Mystic do, the easier it is to just guess right. Obviously, the better. Yeah, this will be an interesting one, for sure. I like that this is a different way of using that, like, sort of wish you know, top of deck wish mechanic than the other cards that use it. This is like an interesting twist on that. I think that's cool. I would expect this card to be like, as cursors go, like it's definitely no witch. It's probably not even going to be as strong as Coven, for example, just because the like the combination of needing to get access to it in the first place and then having to guess right in order to have the effect actually trigger does seem like kind of like a lot of constraints. And so like it's like sort of potentially like tactically powerful, but like not going to be like reliable enough or accessible enough to be like sort of powerful in an overall sense. But I think it'll still be worth getting quite frequently. And then we have Sibyl, +4 cards, +1 action. Put a card from your hand on top of your deck and another on the bottom. Oh. Okay, I was about to say, wow, 4 cards and 1 action. But it is a sifter. So it's actually only, lab level drawing with some additional sifting properties. I guess the thing about this card is that, you really don't want to play it when you're at the bottom of your shuffle. Like if you have 2 cards left in your deck and you play this card, you don't actually get to draw either of them effectively. You have to just put them both back. But the overall, assuming that's not the case, the overall effect is definitely strong. I don't know if it's 6 cost strong. It's a little hard to say. Like, it's lab plus. But going from 5 to 6 is a pretty big deal. Obviously, you can trash Acolytes into Sibyls, and that might be the way that you actually gain them. You're not even required to like use Acolyte's power. You could basically just treat it as a very narrow feast. Just buy it and then trash it into a Sibyl, assuming Sibyls are available. I mean, maybe you trash it into a Sorceress. I don't know, but or maybe the Acolytes are still on top and you don't get to do that. But potentially you can turn it into one of those cards and not pay the full 6 cost price. I don't know if that is intended to be like an influence on the price of the card. Like 6 does seem expensive for this effect, but I don't have like a good intuition for how much better this is as a draw card than Lab, or frankly than like Hunting Party, for example. Like I could see this being worse as a draw card than Hunting Party, but I'm not sure. It's hard to say. Obviously the Sibyl can set up your Sorceress, so you're gonna put a card on top of your deck and then you can wish for it with Sorceress, as well as Mystic mostly. Any other like top decking wish effects. You can obviously you could also use it to like you play it and then you play like a border guard. You have a bad card on top and you discard that and you take the other card. Or you set up. Well, you can't really set up. You can set up Seer. No, you can't set up Seer. Seer's +1 card, +1 action. I don't know. There's probably other things I'm not thinking of that you can use to set up stuff for. But yeah, it seems like good, but potentially overcosted. All right, so that was a lot of words about these cards. Let's move on to the next one. This is also a split pile, and it is Odysseys. These are all multi-types, which is cool. I like having more keywords, like just because it's fun with the few cards that care about like keywords, like Courtier, like that, to just have like lots of keywords. All right. First, we have Old Map, +1 card, +1 action. Discard a card, +1 card. You may rotate the Odysseys. Wow. Okay. So this is a sifter. It doesn't like actually decrease your hand size. It's just going to feel like it for a brief moment. The net effect is you see 2 cards and discard 1, so it is essentially a worse fugitive. You draw one of the cards, you have to discard 1 before you get to draw the next one. For 3, that's all right. I wouldn't be too excited about it. Like, I'm not sure how often this is actually going to be better than like Warehouse, for example. Like, Warehouse does decrease your hand size, but it gives you more sifting. Yeah. And obviously then it's the rotator. And it looks like in general that's going to be the way these things work, is that the top card is the only rotator. So then we have Voyage, +1 action. If the previous turn wasn't yours, take an extra turn after this one, during which you can only play 3 cards from your hand. Oh, you can only play 3 cards from your hand. Whoa, okay. So this is like a really quirky variant of like Outpost or Mission. You can only play 3 cards. It's really hard for me to envision what that looks like. I'm reaching into like Slay the Spire to think about this. In Slay the Spire, there's an artifact or whatever, I forget what they're called. I haven't played Spire in a while, but there's a thing that you can get that says like on your turn you can only play like 6 cards, and it gives you some offsetting benefit, and I don't remember what the benefit is. Probably just an extra energy or something. I think it's something choker. Something, yeah. Anyway, that is what this reminds me of. Is like the idea of you have this like extremely limited like scope of what your turn can be. Like, so for example, if you play Voyage and you're like, oh great, I'm gonna play some laboratories. Lab. I drew some cards. Oops, you don't get to play like any treasures. You're not gonna get to buy anything. So, like, it's really limited. You might, depending on the deck that you have, like, if you have, like maybe this actually fits in a money deck, for example, sort of, kind of, like, because like, oh, I have a bunch of gold, and like, so my next hand is like gold, silver, estate province, and I can still buy a province. Like, great. I don't know how likely that is to come up, and maybe that's just terrible because you're taking, a card out of your previous hand and 2 cards out of your next hand, sort of, and I don't know, like, but I'm like in an engine, like, how do you get anything out of 3 cards? Like, there are going to be cases where, for instance, with like a Traveler, right? If you open like Traveler Voyage, you can, just skip through turns kind of like you would with Mission, where you don't really care like about the quality of the turn, or like what you're doing. You just like want the turn to exist so you can advance through your deck. So like it has that use case, but it's like outside of that kind of thing, I don't know, like 3 cards seems like very, very few, but being able to do that deck cycling can be very powerful. I'm trying to think of like some other examples. So, it is non-terminal. You can combine it with like a Junker. You can combine it with a Trasher, just to cycle all of that stuff faster. So there's probably like a fair number of cases where, you're able to use it for that kind of cycling. Although it is also worth noting that it's a 4 cost, so you're not going to be able to combine it with cards like Bounty Hunter and Priest. But at least not initially, usually. But yeah, that's going to require some testing for sure to get a feel for. Like 3 cards seems like a really strict limit, but I don't know. Maybe it'll still be really good. I anticipate that it will at least sometimes be really good when combined with cards like Travelers. Next, we have Sunken Treasure, which is a 5-cost treasure that generates no coins. Hello, Horn of Plenty. Gain an action card you don't have a copy of in play. Well, that would combine pretty well with Voyage. Like, you're not going to have very much stuff in play because you only play 3 cards anyway. So like even if you have like even if in general you're like, oh well, I have all of these draw cards, like how do I get more of them with my Sunken Treasure? Well, you play Voyage, and then you're not worried about playing your draw cards because like it wouldn't really help your turn anyway. So bang, there you go, get another one. Outside of that, like how often is this going to come up? I mean, it's going to be really good for hitting like expensive actions that are otherwise difficult to come by. So like 6 costs, 7 costs, 8 debt costs, that sort of thing. Like the same kinds of things that we talk about for like, I don't know, transport or not so much camel training, because with camel train you still have to like actually get the action. But yeah, transport is the one that's jumping to mind right now, where you can get literally anything with it. And granted, it might take a little while to uncover this, so in practice, you might not be able to use it to get to something like a forge very quickly, because by the time you get to the Sunken Treasure, like you potentially could have built your deck in such a way that you could just take a forge the normal way. But if there are I don't know, if there's something else going on that makes that more difficult, like hand size attacks, for example, like you don't necessarily have to care. Although, unlike the Augers line, this one doesn't have that, like, you can trash this in order to get another one. So Sunken Treasure itself might not be trivial to pick up for 5 in that scenario. So I don't know. I think it might just come down to like how useful Old Map is and how often you're going to want to get that and then use it to cycle the Odysseys, which is completely unclear to me, because like it's not a very exciting effect. And the other thing about that is that like if you get the Old Map and like your opponent doesn't, right? You've invested, like if you get it just for the sake of like cycling through these, you've invested some of your opportunity in doing that, and your opponent hasn't. And then when it gets cycled, like they're going to have access to those cards too. And like it's not like only you're going to have access to them. So like that's not necessarily super appealing, unless Old Map itself is like just worth getting on its own merits. And finally, we have Distant Shore, +2 cards, +1 action, gain an estate, worth 2 VP. So this is a super lab question mark. I mean, on the one hand, it is. It's a lab that's worth 2 VP and only costs 1 more, but gaining an estate is not usually what you want to be doing. It'll combine well with Plateau Shepherds, but I don't know. Like, it's a good card to have late in the game. It's a good card, I guess, if you want to feed something in a trash for benefit. Like you're like, I need something to power my foragers or my salvager or whatever. Like, this would do the trick for sure. But how often is that going to be the case versus you're just junking yourself? Like, I don't know. I think a lot of the time it's going to be junking yourself, and this is an awfully expensive card for, to take to then turn around and junk yourself with. So I feel like this card is going to be somewhat niche. I mean, obviously, in the late game, if you're doing, late game jockeying, dancing type stuff, taking this instead of Duchy will definitely have some value, because you can get, as soon as you've played it once, you get as many points out of it. But in the meantime, it gives you much better deck control than a Duchy does, of course. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, hard to build a deck where you're playing a bunch of Distant Shores, I would imagine, because gaining all those estates not going to be great. Could accelerate pilouts when it is good, though, of course, because now the estates are going to run. All right. We have also images of the randomizers for Augers and Odysseys. This pile starts the game with 4 copies of each of them. In that order, only the top card can be gained or bought. Yeah, okay. So this is pretty Pretty straightforward. Need to spend any time on that. Next up, we have a normal card, Swap. +1 card +1 action. You may return an action from your hand to its pile to gain it to your hand a different action costing up to 5. Okay, so this is like a Way of the Butterfly as an action card, except potentially a lot more flexible. Well, in some ways at least. Unlike Butterfly or Improve, you can, you don't have to worry about like the exactly like one more or whatever. You can't, however, turn like a 5 into a 6 or take a non-action card. I mean, I think Butterfly has to be actions anyway, but Improve doesn't, if I'm recalling correctly. In any case, this seems pretty cool. Like, you can get a bunch of cheap stuff, get a swap the cheap stuff into expensive stuff, and rebuy the cheap stuff. I mean, and that's basically, a thing that you can do with Butterfly as well, except this is way more efficient just in terms of like it doesn't take up terminal space. It's not like you have to buy 4s to get 5s. You can just buy like 2s or whatever. So yeah, this is like it's in a way, it's kind of like it's also kind of comparable to Advance, although Advance can get you one costing up to 6, but just a way to like basically turn fodder into good stuff. I don't know, like, it seems like a cool effect. I don't know how strong it's going to be, like, relative to building for more standard payload, because I mean the downside is that whatever card you are exchanging, like, you're not getting value out of the turn that you're swapping it, and you, like, if you are investing in, I don't know, like some cheap cantrip, like I guess you'll just say Pearl Diver, even though I'm expecting that to get cut in Seaside 2nd edition. But if you buy a Pearl Diver for the purpose of swapping it instead of, like, say, a silver, and then you swap, like, let's say, I mean, you'd have to have a 5/2 to open like swap Pearl Diver, and so then at that point, like, you can't open double silver anyway. But what I'm wondering is, like, if you okay, I get swap and Pearl Diver, and I play my swap, and I swap my Pearl Diver into a 5, and meanwhile my opponent opened with a couple of silvers and just bought the 5. Like, who's really better off at that point? I have a swap in my deck, but I don't have anything else in my deck that I'm going to swap. Maybe I buy that, after I do the swap, I buy another Pearl Diver, but the silvers would let me buy those 5s anyways. I don't know. Maybe it's just sort of like doesn't maybe in the standard case, it doesn't make too much difference one way or another. And then where it really shines is when you combine it with some other kind of gainer. Like, for instance, Butterfly, obviously, like, rats works really well with Butterfly. You don't get the or Improve, especially because you get to trash them and draw the card. Wait, no, that's Drain Cleanup. Never mind, that doesn't help. But yeah, I mean, maybe, like, that would be a good example of where you can, like, swap the rats, and because they're cheap to come by, like, that's effective. Certainly, swap is going to enable you to use rats as a primary trasher. And maybe also if you just can combine it with with workshop variants, where it's easier to spam those cheap cards. I think I definitely think it will have its moments. I'm not sure that it will be good in the general case. Like, if you're otherwise gain limited, I don't know that this is going to, like, do too much that's exciting, but we shall see. And then we've got one more set of previews, which are liaisons. We got 2 more liaisons today. We saw 5 yesterday. We were seeing 2 more, and this is out of a total of 23. So 7 out of 23 have been revealed so far. Oh, sorry, not liaisons, allies. These are allies. Liaisons cause the allies to show up. Anyway, Crafter's Guild. At the start of your turn, you may spend 2 favors to gain a card costing up to 4 onto your deck. That seems really cool. So in the preview text, Donald X mentions that that's an armory, but this is, my mind, way better than armory. Armory is a terminal, and it takes up space in your deck. This is like you don't have the terminal space, you don't have the armory in your deck. You get to top deck the card, like, you know, just in time to, like, you know, draw into it or you know, trigger it with Piazza, like, or, you know, all kinds of, you know, fun stuff. So this seems quite good to me. I mean, obviously it's going to depend on what 4 costs are in the kingdom, but I really like this one. I think that'll be very nice and well worth investing in, like an underling, for example, in order to trigger this effect in many cases. And then we have City State. When you gain an action card during your turn, you may spend 2 favors to play it. Okay, innovation. Yes, this is innovation. However, it's actually arguably better than innovation. It requires a bigger investment. Innovation, you buy it one time and it's yours forever. This, you need to keep generating the favors, but you can innovate any number of action cards, not just the first one. Innovation, not only can you only innovate 1 action per turn, but it has to be the first one. If you decline to innovate the first one, it's not like you can innovate the second one. It's not like cargo ship, right? With this, you can innovate whenever you want, and so long as you have the favors. So this seems really, really nice. Being able to choose, you know, like, it's not worth, you know, I gained this you know, card. It's not worth innovating that one, but then I gain this other card and it's worth innovating that one. I want to spend the favors on it. Like, that's really nice. Or just, I have a whole bunch of favors, I can innovate all of them. That's really nice. Like, yeah, this seems good to me. There are boards where innovation is not worth it. And so, I mean, it's not even that uncommon. So I do expect that there are going to be boards where it's not worth investing in liaisons in order to take advantage of City State. But when it is worth it, I think it's potentially just going to be, like I said, better than innovation, because the fact that you can do it multiple times is going to be really, really good. And that's potentially going to, like, completely change, like, how your terminal space works and, you know, things like that. So that one's really exciting to me. I would say both of these to me look stronger than most of the ones from yesterday. I mean, granted, like, Cave Dwellers, for example, is going to be stronger with that initial favor, obviously, because you need 2 favors to trigger either of these effects. So, like, it doesn't, you know, they don't do anything in the open. But, and then, like, Peaceful Cult obviously is very strong and, like, you know, definitely worth investing into. But let's see, what are the other ones from yesterday anyway? I don't have the images ready to go in OBS, unfortunately, so I can't easily swap those out, but I can at least read them off. Let's see. So you had, Peaceful Cult is the trashing one. Plateau Shepherds is the scoring one. I mean, that one's sort of just a totally different type of thing. More like a landmark than anything. League of Bankers. I think these are easily better than League of Bankers. I don't really believe in League of Bankers. I think that one's too slow. I think I said as much yesterday. Coastal Haven. I mean, the save effect is good. For sure. Like, you're gonna usually want to invest in some liaisons, or at least a liaison to take advantage of Coastal Haven, I think. and cave dwellers in general probably as well. But I think, like, you know, if you think about it in terms of like, how often am I going to want to get an underling? You know, what am I going to want to use it for? How often am I going to want to get multiple underlings? These cards seem like reasons to get, you know, several underlings. And Peaceful Cult probably is a reason more like to get an underling or maybe two. No, probably no more than that. I mean, we'll see about other liaisons, of course. Cave Dwellers, Coastal Haven, you know, maybe like a little less so than these. And part of the reason for that, of course, is because these are more like expensive. But I think the effects are potentially also more exciting. I mean, those other effects are good as well. It's not, it's like not necessarily that I think that these are better than Cave Dwellers and Coastal Haven so much as like they're both stronger and more expensive. So that's, you know, we'll have to see how that balances out. But all right, well, this has been a lot of words, but that is the previews for today. As was the case yesterday, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but these are all available to play with on the online client on Dominion.games. So you can't like create a custom kingdom with them, but if you play against the bot or you play on rated or unrated, you can turn on previews and you'll get like a random selection of cards from the preview cards. So go check that out if you're interested. And in the meantime, I will be back tomorrow with another set of previews. So until then.